Yeah, so we're just going to start up with a couple questions. Thanks, everyone, for submitting your questions. Keep on submitting those. We love seeing those come in, and I'm sure Bruce would love to speak to all of that. So we're going to just do a couple here, and then we'll get more in depth into these questions for our third session. So really, the questions we wanted to hone in on for right now is kind of going back to this idea of grace and truth that you started out with, Bruce. So this one question was asking how we would encourage college students, who the person asking this question sees as a lot more on the side of acceptance and distorting biblical sexual ethics, to embrace truth and temper their embrace of grace, was the question.
I think that's... Am I on? There we go. I think that's a huge temptation, especially in a college situation, because the culture, especially in that environment, is toward grace, to really be strongly for grace. And so how do you do that in that environment without compromising truth? And it's to stand super strongly for grace. You don't have to back off of that at all. And let me throw some different words out there to use, is tolerance. Of course, is the byword of the day. We want to be tolerant and give everybody space. But the Christianity calls us to a virtue above tolerance, which is love. So tolerance, there's an irony with the word tolerance in a college situation and on this issue. So the word tolerance has ironically come, the real word, the English word tolerance means I disagree with you and I love you anyway. Or we can be friends anyway, even though we disagree. I tolerate our difference. But today, the word is used to mean that you have to agree with me. In other words, tolerance means that you're going to support my point of view, that you'll march with me, or whatever I'm marching about, or you'll agree with me. That's not tolerance. In fact, ironically, that undermines tolerance. To tolerate somebody, you have to disagree with them, otherwise you're not tolerating. Right? So it's just kind of crazy making. So Christianity's virtue is to love people, is to love, which is above tolerance, which is not only do I tolerate you, which is kind of minimal, like I tolerate your existence, but no, I love you while we disagree. So, and then depending on the level of the person you're talking to and what's going on, those are just like some simple ways into it, is to call, depending if the person even respects Jesus or the Bible, is to call people back to Jesus and look at him as an example.
Yeah. And then the second question is also along the lines of this grace and truth. So this person's talking about a close family member of theirs who identifies as LGBTQ, and they kind of assume that this question asker is a phobic bigot at heart. But the LGBTQ family member proclaims to be Christian, and this person just doesn't even broach the topic with this family member, and they know that broaching that would just mean instant withdrawal from the family on their end, and so they're wondering if their current approach, are they emphasizing grace and compromise of the truth, or does their approach to loving them need to change in this situation?
Yeah, and of course, a lot depends on the nature of your relationship with the family member, how close you are or not close. I mean, if it's your brother or your sister, your parent, that's one thing. If it's a cousin, aunt, uncle, it can be a different nature of the relationship. It also matters about whether you're in town or out of town. I'm just saying the real thing, is this someone you see on a regular basis, or is this someone that's like a once-a-year thing? But no matter what it is, you want to love with no limits. So one time I had a lady come to me at our church, and she said, well, my daughter came out as lesbian, and I know I need to love her, but what are the limits? And I was like, I knew what really she was asking about boundaries. But what I said is, there are no limits to your love for your daughter. Love your daughter with no limit. Now, maybe you have a boundary that, okay, you can't sleep in the same bedroom at our house if you're not married, something along those lines, that's appropriate. But I would encourage you really go the extra mile to demonstrate love and grace to a family member who suspects that you are a bigot, who maybe presumes that you believe some things you don't believe. And if the relationship's safe enough, and you can have a safe enough place to, maybe you do some, you set the stage to say, hey, could we have a conversation about this sometime? I mean, if you felt comfortable, I would do it face-to-face, not by email or text, but face-to-face. Hey, would it be okay? I just want you to know it's safe to talk with me. I'm going to love you no matter what you say or believe. If we're totally different, that's fine. But, I want us to have a relationship. We're family. Could we have a conversation about this? Now, depending on the person, you may not even be able to get there. But that's where I would want to be able to get to. But yeah, to celebrate them and build into their life, I'd say one thing is to realize that a person is much more than their sexuality and their gender, how they think about themselves. So you want to engage people about other parts and dimensions of life and connect on lots of those.
Yeah, thanks for speaking into those. With that, we'll go ahead and go into the second session, but we'll come back to more questions after that. So
Yeah.
Thanks, Bruce.
Y'all ask, I got a chance to just preview all the questions, and man, it's just great questions, you guys. And I want to get to as many questions as I can. When should I aim to end this second session? Okay, so the word gay. One way that, this is 5 uses of the word gay. One way it's used is usually by guys, and it's a derogatory term. You're so gay. That's so gay. What does someone mean when they use the word like that? They're meaning that the other person is being feminine in some way. And it's a negative statement. It's like you're not being man enough or masculine enough. Here's what's underneath that's important, is that you're communicating with that word gay something about gender roles, actually, more than sexuality. You throw the old line is you throw like a girl. When I talked about this in Cuba, I was wondering what translates, and I said, does that translate in Cuba like you throw like a girl? They go, oh yeah, we're big into baseball, it's huge in Cuba. Like, we have the exact same statement in Spanish. I was like, oh, I had no idea. Anyway, sadly, in fact, churches are some of the worst offenders of over-accenting cultural gender roles. And so maybe you've been involved in maybe a different church with men's ministries and women's ministries. And in those ministries, sometimes the men's ministry is all about sports and killing animals and, we're just the manly men, And like other guys like, yeah, but I'm a chef. I like cooking. Or there's some guys in my church who owned a florist and it just didn't fit. And then the women's it's like, here's dainty flowers and it's who gets the award for the best table decoration, and it's super girly. And there's women who are like, I don't want anything to do with that. Gag me. I'm not that kind of a person, I want to watch the MMA. And anyway, anyway, a lady at our church, she's totally into boxing, and she's on our safety team, and she was in the Navy. And anyway, my son Jimmy, my second son, grew up, what he loved growing up was ballet. And he was really awesome at ballet, danced in local theaters around here. So imagine what the guys said about him. And on his first day of, I can't remember if it was middle school or high school, he put on his ballet t-shirt. And my wife's like, Jimmy, are you sure that's the shirt you want to wear to your first day at school? Just worrying for him. And he says, yeah, I just want to get it over with. And I was like, yeah, okay. I just want to go ahead and get it over with and get it out there. Is there anything wrong with my son Jimmy dancing ballet? Of course not. What I would say is it'd be great, y'all, in your church to have a wider span of what it is to be man or woman, of masculinity, femininity, and allow, because sadly what happens these days is, and parents, this is a trap you fall into with your kids. Your little girl plays with trucks and doesn't want to wear a dress. Oh my gosh, she's a lesbian and she's 2. You're like, really? Or you have a boy and the boy, anyway, wants to play at the castle and likes Barbies and whatever else. It's like, don't get all freaked out way too early, and give a lot of span that maybe you're raising a young man who is an amazing artist or a musician, and some of the ways that things they like and the things they enjoy are more culturally feminine. These are not biblical, right? These don't arise out of the scripture. A classic one that's crazy is blue pink. We know blue is boys, right, and pink is girls, of course. Only for the last 80 years. It was the flip 100 years ago, just that recent. Crazy. Anyway, another way the word gay is used is straight out sexual behavior. And by the way, the big question is kind of on this topic is, can you be Christian and gay? Can you be gay and Christian? Well, how about gender roles? Can you be a more feminine man and be a Christian? Duh. Or a more masculine woman? Of course. And then what about sexual behavior? By that we mean two men having sex, two women having sex. Can you engage in gay sexual behavior and be a Christian? Can you engage in gay sexual behavior and be a Christian? It's like, well, okay. And you can see, is it wrong? Of course. That's biblically wrong. But can you be a Christian? I hope so, because I could ask the question differently. Can you sin and be a Christian? Like, oh my gosh, otherwise we're all wrong. We're all out, right? Because we're all sinners. So yes, identity. Here's a big question that comes up a lot. What if gay sometimes means my identity. My identity is I am lesbian, I am gay, I am queer. And it's an I am statement. Can you identify as gay and be a Christian? Well, of course, because you can be Christian and sin. But should your identity be in being gay? Or again, whatever the term might be you define yourself in. Well, of course not. Not your fundamental identity. We have to think a little deeper here. Yes, your core identity is that you belong to Jesus if you're a Christian. But even that word identity, just a little quick theological aside, is that word identity in the Bible? Answer, no. Of course, no, neither is the word Trinity. But is it a good theological concept to build around? Well, if you studied theology or you looked at the history of theology, I'm a big history of ideas person. I love where did ideas come from. Well, that word identity has only been used in Christian theology for about 50 years. Shocking to me. I thought this was hundreds of years old. It's actually, biblical categories would be I'm justified, I'm clothed with Christ, I'm united with Christ, I've been adopted. These are biblical categories. Not that identity is wrong, but fundamentally what you're saying there is that your first love should be God. Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Right? No idols, nothing above Christ. So you shouldn't identify primarily or essentially as I am a grandfather or a pastor or an engineer or a man or a woman or gay or straight, whatever right? Jesus is the heart of the whole thing. Okay, that's the big deal. But now let's go a little deeper. There are primary allegiances or primary identity and secondary. I'm a grandfather. I'm a pastor. I play racquetball. All these are true about me. So if I say I am a racquetball player, doesn't mean that's my core identity. So I met a lady and she said, well, I am a single mom. That tells you something about her. She has adopted, I can't remember how many kids, like a bunch, like 4 kids. Wow, impressive. She's also lesbian. What does that tell you about her? All these are identity statements. They're true statements about this person. She's also, say, 50 years old. Okay, so here's my big concern about all this. Well, I'll say one more use of the word, and then I'll say my 2 more uses. The way the word's most often used is attraction. Also, orientation is, well, I'm oriented. My orientation is gay or bisexual or whatever it might be. Orientation is a challenging category. It's not straight out of the scripture. And it's, but anyway, let's go to attraction. The most common use of the word gay, like street level. When someone says someone's gay or they're gay, they mean you're attracted romantically, sexually, erotically to your same sex and not so much to the opposite sex. That's the kind of like fundamental meaning of the word. So can you be attracted to your same sex and be a Christian? Yes. Should you call yourself or not call yourself a gay Christian? And here's where there's some debate among Christians that's going on. And some of it is really, well, some Christians say you should only use the word same-sex attracted. Or they'll say, I have SSA. I'm same-sex attracted. And they don't want to use the word gay. Other people say, no, I'm gay. And if gay means I'm attracted to my same sex, aren't we saying the same thing? Gay or SSA. So depending on what you read, what you look at, I'm just letting you know there is a debate out there. And some people want to avoid the word gay. And they say, well, you shouldn't call yourself a gay Christian. And why would they say that? Well, I don't want to associate myself with the gay movement or parades or kind of an anti-Christian deal or free sex with anybody, going to bars and clubs and all that. I don't want to associate myself with all of that. And maybe often that comes from a person who was involved in a whole sexually immoral space and has now come out of it. Other people say, no, I'm trying to minister to other college students or other people, and if I talk about SSA, no one knows what the heck I'm talking about. or same-sex attracted. The word is gay. And it is true that I am gay. And it's true that I'm committed to Jesus. Here, let's just push the question a little further. Some people say you shouldn't use gay Christian because it's identifying with your sin. You might as well say I'm a lying Christian, a thieving Christian, a hateful Christian, as calling yourself a gay Christian. We've got to push into that theologically. Well, is being gay sinful? Is it a sin to be, using an older word, homosexual? Is that against God's word? Is it a sin to confess? Well, let's go deeper in. We've got to distinguish between sin and temptation. So, James says that when desire is conceived, then it gives birth to sin. So a temptation is not sin, right? And we kind of know that. And you know the difference between temptation and lust. Then the classic is with guys. I'm a guy, so I can identify with guys. You know, you're walking down the beach, you see a woman in a bikini. She is like, all the perfect dimensions and this amazing body. And you look and you're like, wow, that's a beautiful woman. There's nothing wrong with that. When you start undressing her in your mind, okay, lust, or imagining things with her, yep, lust, right? Or you start staring for a long time, right? Lust. But so we know the difference. There's temptation and there's mental sin of lust. And of course, that applies to all temptations. And we know Jesus was tempted in all ways. Well, I've heard so if you are tempted, you're attracted to people of your same sex, women with women, men with men. Is that a sin? Is the desire sinful? I'm going to go two different directions here. The word desire is a funny word in English, a broad word in English. If by desire you mean lust, yep, that's sinful. If by desire you mean attraction or temptation, that's not sinful. Right? That's the difference. So, some people mistakenly use the word gay to mean something sinful. But the attraction is not sinful. So let's talk about a different sin. What if someone says, I'm an alcoholic? Which often have people introduce themselves. Hi, I'm Bruce, I'm an alcoholic, right? In an AA meeting. Are they confessing sin? Well, it'd be totally different if they came in and said, yeah, I've been getting drunk almost every night this week is awesome. And in fact, I'm kind of drunk right now, and then wait till tonight, I'm really going to get drunk, and I'm just having a blast. That's a problem. We're delighting in our sin. That's different than if I say I'm an alcoholic and I've been sober for 5 years. Now I'm recognizing my temptation pattern, and I'm confessing I have an attraction to alcohol. And I'm admitting that. That temptation to alcohol, to drunkenness, is not sinful in itself. It can lead there. So this is important well, I'll tell you a different story. A couple came to me. There's a couple truths here that are important. Husband and wife used to be leaders in my church or at a different church, and they called and said, we have a family emergency. We have to see you right now. And their voice they were amped. They were upset. They came, they sat down, and there was so much hurt and pain on their faces. And they said, our son's 14 years old. He just came home from a Christian camp, and he said he's gay. The mom said, 2 weeks ago we celebrated our daughter's wedding. It was the happiest day of my life. I've already had a Xanax, and I feel like I want to die still. I was like, whoa. Okay, that's a huge problem. Moms and dads, if that's how you respond to your child coming out, that's a major problem. And if in a church, this couple came to me, not to their current pastor, because they're ashamed, embarrassed. It's like, we don't need to have all that shame and embarrassment. So I'm like, who's your support? Who's going to support you? Are you not going to tell your church or your Bible study, life group, small group that your son's come out? That's the problem on the parent side. And then they said, well, will you, and by the way, the danger there is that mom said, I feel like I want to die. How's her son going to hear that? And what the worst thing Christian parents, I'll say among the worst, but maybe the absolute worst thing some Christian parents say is to their son or daughter who comes out, it would be easier if you died, because now I have to live with you being this way. And what does that lead to? Suicide. They go, well, if that's what you want. I mean, that is just, so it's, anyway, on the parent side, just staying there for a second, you've got to, what do you, I think one of the questions is, what do you do if your child comes out, or if a friend, somebody comes out to you, but typically it's somebody pretty close to you. Of course you don't freak out and all that. Here's your response. I am so honored that you trusted me so much to share this with me. Wow. Now, as a parent, you're probably going to have lots of intense feelings. It's going to be upsetting. Those feelings can be, what did we do wrong as a mom and a dad? Quickly, oh my goodness, are we not going to have grandchildren? What kind of life does this mean for my child? I didn't want this. All these things just come racing to you. You have to suck all that down. If you love your child, you step out of your pain and your fears and your stuff. You step all the way out of it, and you think to yourself, if you can in that moment, what did it take for your son or daughter to come out to you? Ask yourself how long they've been feeling that way before they told you. Average time a kid finds out, but first thinks, hey, I think I feel about boys the way someone feels about girls, or the reverse, is 13. Average time they tell their parents, it varies in different contexts, more like 18. So that means your child's been living with this for 5 years. It's common for kids not to tell their parents till their freshman year in college. And then, I'm not predicting this for some of y'all, but I mean, it's the Christmas holiday break that a kid will have hit it all through high school, and then in college come out, and then they'll tell their parents the very last day of Christmas break. It's like they've got to tell them, but they can't do it, and they can't do it, and they're praying, and they're talking to their friends, and they're telling their friends. So let me just try to get you in the mind frame again. My parents are Christians. They're going to be mad at me. They might reject me. I don't know if they're still going to pay for college. I better start saving money. I better pack a bag, because what if they say, get out? And they're telling their friends, hey, I'm going to tell my parents tonight. I want you all to be ready, because I may need to come stay at your place. And I mean, so you have no idea the fear, the anxiety to come out to you as a mom or dad, or even as a friend, an adult person they could trust. And your response will be so powerful or so negative in how they view God and how they connect to other people. And so, yes, you have all these feelings you've got to deal with, and you do. You need to deal with all your fears, all your concerns, all your stuff, but not in that moment. In that moment, it is all about them. So it's thank you. I am honored that you would trust me so much to share this. And maybe as a mom or dad, it's okay to say, gosh, I wish, I would have loved for you to tell me sooner. I want you to know I love you unconditionally. You could have told me, we want to support you. We're here for you. What you want to be sure, the greatest fear is rejection. So what you want to overcome is, we are not rejecting you. We love you. No matter, you want to communicate unconditional love. And you can deal with all the whatever. You don't want to open the Bible and go, do you know this is wrong? Like, really? I mean, that's their, they know what you think. They know the church you're in. They know what you've taught them growing up and whatever all else. That's not, common parent mistake with older kids. You've been teaching them all their life, you need to make your bed. Now, don't you know you need to make your bed? You're like, oh, they're 17, really. Anyway, other parenting advice. So this family, this mom and dad said, would you meet with our son? I said, sure. So what do I say to this 14-year-old boy who says he's gay and he's just disclosed to his parents? Well, just a little more I see lots of young parents, so a little more parenting advice is he said, oh my gosh, Bruce, or Pastor Miller, Pastor Bruce, where he said, they cut off all my internet and all my channel subscriptions, and they grab my phone and they want to see my contacts, and now they suspect all my friends and my buddies, and they're locking down my life. And would you talk to him? And he said, I didn't have to tell him. Like, I could have not come out. Would you tell my parents to chill? I'm like, yes, I will. And I'll talk to your parents. Because the common mistake is to think you're going to lock your kid down. And you're going to put all these rules up. It just doesn't work. That's not the way to go at it. And you communicate love. And so I said to him, here's the false narrative out there. You have to be gay or Christian. Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there's a war. There's a culture war going on. And it's a battle between the Christians and the gays. And which side are you on? So you either got to be a Christian and come to the student ministry and be involved in the church, or you're going to be gay and then you're not Christian, or you're not welcome at the church. Now that's overdrawing it, right? That's a caricature, but that's sort of the unspoken feeling. And so for a 14-year-old boy, I've got to make a choice. Am I going to be a Christian and do the church thing and all that, or am I going to be gay? And there is a community of people out there. There's a club, LGBTQ club, probably to school, and saying, look, be who you are and be who you always were made to be, and then you'll be happy and live whatever you want, and we'll accept you. And then if the church's message is, okay, look, we'll pray for you, don't tell anybody, and we really hope you get over this, and this is shameful. Which side? Where are you going? So I said to him, you can be gay and Christian. Look, you have these desires right now, you're 14. They might change. It's not impossible, highly unlikely. God can do anything, right? If someone's blind and all you say to him is, God can heal you from being blind. They're like, yeah, I know that. Thank you, but I'm blind, and it'd be great if God healed me, but could we also pray other prayers? And so same with him. I said, look, it might change, but it's more likely that you're going to have these desires all your life. But here's the deal. You can faithfully follow Jesus. You can not go have sex with other men, and you can follow Christ with all your heart, and you're going to need to rely on the Spirit and on Jesus and draw close to him, and you might be the most mature person in the church. You can be an elder, you can be a pastor, you can be a missionary. You can serve Christ fully. And with a hope in his face. He's like, oh, wow. Okay. So to me, that's the important way of sorting that out, about the importance between temptation and sin and understanding the difference there. When I think about how do you respond to people, a lot of your questions about how do I respond to family members or friends or other people at college and all that, is I look at Jesus' example. I'm just coming back to Jesus, y'all. Full of grace and truth. So we had 3 conversations with sexual sinners, so to speak, that I think we can think about in terms of conversations about in the LGBTQ thing. And remembering LGBTQ is, yes, it's an issue, but we're talking about people. We're talking about our kids, our friends, our parents. So here are the 3 chapters, or 3 stories. It's the woman living with a woman in John 4, the adulterous woman, John 8, and the sinful woman, Luke 7. So John 4 is the woman at the well, if you know that story, and she had 5 husbands, and the man she's with now is not her husband. And she has this amazing conversation with Jesus at the well. And then she runs back to her city called Sychar to tell everybody about Jesus. Okay, when she ran back, had she moved out from the guy she was living with? No, it was like a few minutes, maybe an hour, however long it took to get from the well back to Sychar. Of course not. And she's the first evangelist. And she's telling everybody about Jesus. And they go, we want to find out for ourselves. Did Jesus compromise grace or truth talking to her? Of course not. You read the story. We don't have time to dig into John 4 in some length, but read the story. He doesn't shy away from, hey, here's what's going on with you, and I know that. And by the way, a lot of times we've misconstrued her as being like the sinful woman who's living with this man and all these divorces. It was not legally permissible for a woman to divorce at that time. So, the men divorced her, and sometimes the economic realities were you needed to live with a man to survive. So, or was she being abused or being kept or being forced into that? We just don't know, but the chances are more like she was a woman who had been taken advantage of than that she was a woman who was like this big sexual sinner. Anyway, she really was the first. This is John chapter 4. She really was the first evangelist. So let me just transpose it to today. I have a lady coming to our church named Alicia. She's transgender, And how do you think through all that? And what do you do? Well, she's transgender. The lady came to my church. Here's what happened. A lady came up to me on a Sunday and said, "Would you pray for me?" Sure. What do you need prayer for? Well, I led a lady to Christ, or man, or I'm not sure who, what, at my hairdresser, and they want me to disciple them. I don't know how to. I don't know what to do. I'd love to pray for you, to disciple your friend. And then she looked me straight in the face and she said, "Would my friend be welcome at our church?" So here's the test for you. When that person asks you that, do you blink? Do you pause? Because the blink or the pause, the person's like, "I'm done." Or do you say, "Well, let me think about that," or, "Well, of course they'd be welcome, but they're going to need to deal with their sin." Quickly, do you go, "But they're going to need to deal with their sin"? Or do you quickly go, "But they need to know what the Bible teaches"? Or "What are they going to be dressed like?" Or is your response, "Sure, man, I'd love for them to come. I'd love to meet your friend. In fact, could we go out to lunch afterwards, or could they sit by me? And I'd love to hear their story." Totally different, right? Massively. And y'all, that's a lot what it's about in terms of, think about how Jesus welcomed the woman at the well. First, she was a woman. She's a Samaritan, just different race, different. Jews didn't like Samaritans. In the middle of the day at a well, it wasn't like. The people could have been, "Jesus, what the heck are you doing talking to a woman like by yourself and at a well in the middle of the day?" Anyway, he breaks all these rules, and you want to be that kind of a church that shows grace to everybody, that kind of freaks out the religious people. Because you're showing so much grace. And Jesus' disciples came back and like, "What are you, Jesus? We know you're great and all, but what are you doing? Like, this isn't right." So Alicia, she said, "Well," I said, "Yeah." So I responded, "Yes, of course." And so she said, "Okay, well, she hadn't been in church in 30 or 40 years. What? Whoa. I mean, anyway, a long time. I'm like, "What?" And I was like, "Well, probably never coming." Then Alicia came. And I started looking for people, I call people of grace, to go meet her. What did I mean by that? Isn't everybody a person of grace? No, I wanted people who weren't freaked out, who weren't going to be feeling weird or something, who'd go and just greet her like crazy. And because here's the thing, your church is a welcoming church to all people. But it's what do you mean by welcome? It's not just that, it's how do you express welcome? So, okay, in a relationship with somebody, a good friend or a spouse, I'm going to use a word. And you're in a conversation, you ask them, and they say, "Fine." Same word. And they say, how are you feeling? "Fine." If you've been married long enough or you have any emotional IQ, right at all, you're like, they meant not fine, right? So someone comes to your church and they look different or they're dressed different or whatever it is, and you walk up to them and you say, "Well, welcome. Come, we'd love to have you here at Wiley Northeast." They just heard, "You don't want me here. I'm not welcome. I probably should walk out the door." You think about how an LGBTQ person, someone who's non-straight, feels walking in the door. Let me ask you, do some of y'all think you have gaydar? Like you kind of know? Okay, how did you know? You didn't see them having sex. I'm pretty sure you didn't, right? So how did you know they're gay? You're like, "Oh, I can just tell." Does that not help you realize there's something about being gay that's more than sex? Just think about that. Okay, so now, a gay person walks in that door right there. What radar do they have on? Just like you have radar, they have radar. And you know what their radar is what they're tuned to? Am I wanted here or not? And they're going to read every face, every handshake, every, we greet each other sometimes. It's like, hey, nice to meet you. Or, hey, or hey, or hey. Right? Okay, those all communicate something different about the level of welcome and all that. And I realize, some people, as a pastor, I wait for the other person to initiate because I don't want to hug someone who doesn't want to be hugged or, so like, you tell me a handshake, fist bump, hug, where are you, At any rate, someone told me, "Bruce, I realize you're not a hugger." I'm like, "No, I'm just waiting for the other person to initiate so I don't hug the wrong person." But y'all, if you say, "Well, welcome," or "Welcome, man, I'm so glad you're here." So different. Same word. Totally different. And what a person is trying to read is not only am I welcome, it's am I wanted? So Alicia came, people greeted her, and then she said, well, let me just ask you, how do you picture Alicia? This is a transgender person who came to our church, male to female transition. How old do you think they are? What do you think they look like? Where do you think they're coming from? Just imagine. Because Alicia said, Bruce, I want to have lunch with you because I need to know where the leadership of this church is coming from because I'm transgender. Right from the beginning, that conversation. Okay, Alicia is a lawyer. I was going to say, what's her job? She's a master's degree in engineering, then got a law degree, and is a patent attorney. And worked for a company if you live here, Texas Instruments, for years. Just, again, what I want to encourage you to do is listen to people's stories, because you think you know where they're coming from and you don't, right? And conservative, politically, yes. And how long has she been a Christian? When I met her. About 4 months. When did she transition? In her 60s, after her parents died. Because she dealt with gender dysphoria all her life, and it was so painful, but she couldn't deal with it, and she waited till her parents died. And she said, I just want to learn about Jesus. So then, at least to things about your church and how do you welcome people of all kinds. So Alicia said last December, hey, I'm going to semi-retire and I'd love to serve. Can a transgender person serve at your church? Well, if you're in the church leadership world, your mind just is immediately racing through policies and procedures and guidelines and what standards do we have for who and how's it going to look and what's right and what. And if you're not, maybe it doesn't all run through your mind. I'm just telling you, when I talk to a group of pastors, they're like, so I said, sure, that'd be great. And if you might not remember, but last year, Christmas was on Sunday. So was New Year's Day. And I said, we're going to be shorthanded. Why don't you just come and fill in wherever's needed? She's like, great, she's living alone, no family, lonely. Love to come help. I've got all the time in the world. She did. And then my person who's responsible for greeters said, why don't you greet? And then I didn't even realize it, but made her a greeter. And that's great. What's the qualifications for being a greeter? Can you greet? I mean, I don't know. You don't have to be a Christian. You just have to be nice to people. Anyway, so Alicia became a greeter. And I got some significant pushback in my situation, which was Bruce. If we have a transgender person at the front door, young families come, they're gonna go away. Okay. Well, Alicia came to me in January or February of last year and said, Bruce, I have a monthly transgender group I go to, counseling for people who've had surgeries and all. And it's a secular counselor. Helping transgender people. It's a group, Saturday group. And she said, could I tell them how warmly I've been welcomed? My gosh, would you pray for me to talk to him about you and Christ Fellowship? Oh my gosh. So I did. I prayed with Alicia and I thought, this is the woman at the well. Going back to Sychar. And so then in the back of my mind, I knew I had a little pushback from people on her being a greeter. And they're like, can't Alicia serve in some other area? What they meant is like where nobody sees her, basically. And so that next Sunday, I said, well, Alicia, how did it go? And she said, great. I told them all about how I was so warmly welcomed by you in the church, and you trust me so much, you even let me be a greeter. And I just went, oh my gosh, I had no idea how much it meant to Alicia. And I knew it was going to continue to trip up my more conservative-minded leader person who helped start the church with me. It was really a tough conflict. It becomes an issue of grace. And eventually this couple in my church left my church, and it was incredibly painful for me. A couple I've known for 30 years helped me start the church over Alicia. I'm saying that just to tell that story to bring out points about grace. And so when you're thinking about where someone serves, it's no double standards. So, and people will, this is just a simple principle, is no double standards. So what are your criteria for being a greeter, an elder, a teacher, and for children, or whatever they are? They should apply to everybody across the board, not with a special asterisk unless you're trans or gay or bi or whatever the word is. Anyway, it tests the grace. Just to make it vivid, to continue Alicia's story, is that I had people saying, well, what bathroom is she going to use? I'm like, well, I'm going to tell you honestly, as a pastor, I'm like, I don't care. I just want to love her and see her come to Jesus and grow. I'm not really worried about the bathroom. but a lot of people are. It's become a political thing, right? Bathrooms. And so I met with her and said, and I was really nervous because I didn't want to scare her away as a new believer. But I said, look, Alicia, as your pastor, I don't care what bathroom you use. You can use any bathroom in the church. But I said, there are some people who are struggling with it. Would you be willing to be the bigger person and consider using our family restroom? Her response? Well, sure. I don't want to offend anybody. Oh my gosh, she's showing more maturity than some people who should be more mature. Anyway, and so then she did. And then I was so surprised because she said, well, I went to my transgender group again and I told them how we're doing the bathrooms. I thought, oh no. And she said, they thought it was so great. I'm like, oh, wonderful. Well, then the Monday after Mother's Day, I had this church member who left eventually called and said, irate, and said, I tried to use the women's bathroom with my 90-year-old mother who came here for Mother's Day, and I couldn't because I saw Alicia walking in the women's restroom. Like, really? Anyway, so maybe then I had another complaint, and then about a month or two later, I met with Alicia. We had lunch, and I said, I didn't know where she's coming from. Like, oh, it could be anything, right? Maybe she just gone, look, I'll use every bathroom I want. I'm gonna get all bowed up. Or is it she forgot? Or I don't know. And so I said, Alicia, I just want to sensitively re-raise that bathroom question or issue. She goes, oh yeah, I'm doing exactly what we said. I'm like, well, I hear that, but a couple people have seen you in the women's restroom. And it ends up, well, yeah, the family restroom was full. Here's the answer. It was full, and there was a line, and I needed to go. And she said, there's actually 2 rows of stalls. It's a large women's restroom, and I use the back ones that almost no one's ever in. Like, oh my gosh, she's being, as gracious as possible, but still there was some pressure. So I said, well, we have a green room bathroom behind the stage, and so you can use that one. And I said, I want to make you a VIP. So I talked with my team. I said, actually, we have offices that have a key card to get into some offices upstairs. And I said, there's a bathroom up there. And I said, tell you what, we're going to give you access there. I totally trust you. And so we're going to give you a key card with your name on it to use the rest of the staff restroom. And she just felt honored. Still, this family left my church because of the tension over that. Anyway, here's how, I'm just thinking, here's grace in the details, the concreteness of it all. Second story is adulterous woman. So this is John 8. I know there's some debate about whether it's textually in the Bible or not, but it's probably a true story whether it was actually in the original text or not. So did the woman commit adultery? Yeah, there's no question. She's caught in the act. We don't even know how she was dressed. They caught her in the act. Okay, so what did Jesus say to her? What did Jesus say to that woman? Go and sin no more. What else did he say to that woman? Neither do I condemn you. And when I've asked groups, it's interesting, like half the room says neither go and sin no more, and half says neither do I condemn you, and both are true. Okay, how could possibly Jesus say neither do I condemn you? Because she's guilty. Wouldn't he be diminishing truth? I mean, she is guilty of adultery, and he said neither do I condemn you. How could he not condemn a guilty person? This is the heart of the gospel, y'all. This is right to the center of it, is that God saves us when we're ungodly. Jesus died for us while we're sinners. He didn't die for you or for me because we're so awesome. He's like, man, you're so great. I want you on my team. Like, Kim, man, this is your great. No, he doesn't love us because we're lovable, because we're unlovable. That's the whole reason he died, is because we're sinners. And he forgives us, offers us forgiveness freely. This is amazing. This is the heart of the gospel. He says to you, neither do I condemn you for all your sin, because it's all put on Jesus. Now, in terms of talking to people, which did he say first to the woman? If you know the story really well. We could open up John 8, but neither do I condemn you. And then the last thing he said is go and sin no more. Just think about that as you're interacting with folks. Let's put it in an LGBTQ conversation, right? Presuming she's non-straight. Starting with neither do I condemn you, but of course saying go and sin no more, because that's also gracious to speak the truth. Luke 7 is a much longer story, fascinating story, a chapter worth really studying about Jesus and how he responds. He's at a party, and this woman's washing his feet with her hair, And the Pharisees, you have to realize Pharisees would be like the most religious people in your church. Whoever like keeps all the rules the best, does everything that everyone asks them to do. Like they're like the super religious people. And they said, don't you know who's touching you? She's a sinful woman. Okay, prostitute. So how did they know she was a prostitute? Now, we don't know, but let me ask you, if you went down a particular street in downtown Dallas, could you pick out the prostitutes? Yes, right. Okay, because they're advertising. Now, there's a lot of things we don't know in the text. Was she being a prostitute that night at the party? We don't know. Could be. Had she quit being a prostitute when Jesus said, I forgive you? And there's so much that's not there, but he breaks into the story with a parable right in the middle. He talks to the Pharisee a little bit and says, let me tell you a story. And he said, there was a man who owed, it's old money denarii, but let's say a man who owed $50. And then there's another man who owed $5,000. They were both forgiven. Who loves most? And the guy goes, oh, I guess the one who's forgiven the most. Just goes, yeah. And then he goes on to say, you didn't wash my feet. You didn't even, give me any water. And she's washing my feet with her hair. And he forgives her. It's this amazing moment. And so I think, again, take that story, apply it to LGBTQ people in this conversation, how you treat people, how you respond to people. All right, let's take one more break. And any instructions we need to give? Or it's a coffee break? All right, take a break. We'll come back and answer questions.